Welcome to a new tutorial here from Mambo.js design pattern. Today we are going to cover the design pattern that I use for Mambo.js for class names, CSS class names, and how we determine the tag name for the DOM elements that we create dynamically. This is not going to be a difficult tutorial as the technical aspect of it. It's pretty simple. I'm not going to be writing anything or showing you anything overly complicated. So the logic, the code of it is pretty simple. We're just going to read and explain and walk through it. What I really want to explain in this video is the concept of why I came about with this design pattern and what is the purpose of it. So this is not necessarily about how to just solve a problem. I mean, how to apply a CSS style or how to change a tag name. It's more about why we do it the way we do it. And for that, what we need to keep in mind is the concept that Mambo.js is a library of reusable components. So reusable means, one aspect of it means that the components themselves need to be pretty abstract. Abstract meaning that they shouldn't really know what they are doing, in a sense, meaning that you pass in a configuration and then it just simply goes off to do it runs a set of logic based on that configuration, but it can be fully configured. So that's what it means by abstract in a way. So it's grabbing, it's setting, it's creating elements dynamically, but those elements are configurable. It's using a set of class names, CSS class names, but those can be replaced, and the component itself shouldn't know anything about it. So it shouldn't know anything about the value of those configurations. It just grabs the configurations, it goes by the properties of those configuration, and that's it. And so that makes it very abstract and reusable and configurable. Of course, there's logic that it knows about. Obviously, nothing is 100% true on anything. So the Mambo.js, if we look at the library here on the left, we have reusable components, UI for the UI, reusable components for the UI, and then we have also tools, utilities. And so we're gonna stick to the UI only. This is specific to UI components only, which are also native web components, because we're going to talk about DOM tag elements, DOM tag names, and the CSS class name. So that's strictly HTML, CSS, web browser related topic. So it's only for UI components. So we're going to take the Mambo tab as an example, which is the latest one that I created a few days ago, which extends an HTML element. So by default, this class is a HTML custom element. It is a native HTML element. And so we have the concept of the inside of the component, inside of Mambo.js, and then the outside of Mambo.js. What I mean by that is that we, as the Mambo.js development team, we are working on the inside of Mambo.js, the inner workings of each component. And because we have a highly configurable design pattern, highly reusable design pattern, it means that we have to do certain things in a way that allows for the outside to pass in a configuration. So it is not the same when you create a component for a web application that you are not planning to reuse anywhere else than a set of components that you are planning to reuse. So the perspective, the scope of the work is completely different. So when you're working inside Mambo.js, you have to keep in mind that everything that we do is from the perspective that it must be configurable and reusable on the outside. And what I mean by the outside, an example of the outside would be for Mambo tab, we will have to go to where we are installing this Mambo tab, which would be our demo section. We have the demo Mambo tab. So demo is basically the outside. I know it's in the same application. We are developing in a web application, but we are developing the inside logic of Mambo.js. And then on the demo, we have to also implement that same components that we are developing so we can test them. So this will be an example of what the outside logic looks like. So if I'm a Google developer and I choose to use Mambo.js for a web application, this is what I would write as the web developer. So the logic here is pretty straightforward. It does not compare to the inner workings of the Mambo tab. Yes, the configuration object is relatively larger than many other UI libraries. And that is intentional. This Mambo.js has a different scope. And we're gonna dive into some of those reasons in here, in this tutorial, specific to CSS and the tag name. But it will also give you a fresh idea of what's of the scope and the what do you call it? The goal of what we're trying to accomplish. So this, everything in demo is what I would call now the outside. Okay, how you call a new instance of the Mambo tab and you pass a configuration, and how the Mambo tab takes this configuration and resolves the CSS class names and the tag names. Going back to Mambo tab. This takes place inside the configure function. I explained this on the other videos on the design pattern for the general design pattern for a reusable component and a native component. But now we're going to concentrate specifically on the CSS configuration and the tag names configuration. And the concept here is that what most developers are used to, and also including most of the tutorials that you might have watched, especially for Angular. React is slightly different, but especially for Angular and for Vue and jQuery, developers are used to providing an HTML template, which then they load a JavaScript on it. And so what Mambo.js does, we create all the HTML dynamically 100%. So that is a huge time saver for developers. But on the other hand, it poses challenges because now the developer doesn't have access to to that HTML structure. We took that away from them, and we are doing everything dynamically on the inside. So what they're used to is they provide the HTML template, and so they have full control on what class names they put into those HTML templates, and also what is the tag names for those HTML templates. So we took that away for a good cause, And so now we need to provide a way to configure that. We need to give back the control of that HTML structure that we are building internally. And the logic here goes, the design pattern for this goes, is that all the HTML gets created dynamically, internally, by the UI component. And for that, we are leveraging the DOM.js manipulation, the DOM.js library for manipulation. And we have this create tag that takes two arguments. The first one is the name of the tag that we are creating. That could be a button, a div, span, or Mambo, whatever name, right? HTML supports custom tag names. And the second argument is an object with the configuration. I'm not gonna get into that detail because there is already another video, which is the DOM manipulation video. If you haven't watched, you should definitely watch. I go into details of DOM.js, including this configuration object. And so the create tag returns an instance of that new class that was created. So now we have that instance in memory. Whether you install that tag in the DOM or not, that is irrelevant. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I cover that on the other design pattern tutorials. Our components can work strictly on memory. I mean, we do a lot of it in memory, and then the final installation into the DOM is optional. And so we create, either way, however this gets installed, we create our tag elements, and all internally we save them into our variables. So every DOM element that we create must have a configurable name and a configurable class name. And if we're looking at the DOM, basically this is what it is. Now in this case, I mean, I have this Mambo button. I have just made a refactoring of this, and now I need to apply a class name to this element as well. But you can see each has a class name, right? So each tag must have a corresponding class name. Whether there is a style to be applied or not, that doesn't matter. We apply the class name regardless, and that class name could be empty, and the class name might not even exist. That style sheet might not even exist. It doesn't matter. We provide the class anyways because that's the logic that's inside our components. So if you're used to working with Bootstrap or Material UI components, you'll notice the big difference here is that they have chosen a CSS class name design pattern where they apply multiple class names to a given element, and they also reuse those class names for multiple UI components. So they leverage one class name across the entire library. And so you end up with one DOM element that has 2, 3, 4 class names. I don't like that design pattern. I see the point of it. That gives you a much smaller footprint as far as how many class names you create. But from the perspective of the web developer and the user, and having the ability to override styles and customize a specific instance of a UI component for a specific use case, that design pattern is it just doesn't work well. It doesn't work well. I like the concept of having to rely on one single class name for every DOM element, and that class name is unique across the entire library. So yes, that will force you to create a much bigger set of class names, but that is fully intentional on my part. and it gives you greater power when it comes to developing a web application, because it is always the case where you have to make tweaks here and there. So if you think that you can have one set of styles that will work across your entire web application 100%, that is absolutely never the case. It's much lower than 100%, and you always, your graphic designers and your business people always come up with variations. Okay, yeah, this works over here, but it doesn't work over there. And they don't give you a break. They don't say, oh, okay, no problem if you cannot do it in code, I understand, we change it. That never is the case. The case is, it needs to look like this, that is a design that is approved, that's the UX, so the user experience will always overrule your code limitations. And when it comes to doing the web development, as a web developer, that's when you say, you know what, I would love to just get rid of all these classes, put my own single class with all the styles that I need for one implementation and call it a day, and then I'm done. That's what I would like to do as a web developer. But with current tools, we always fall into this, oh, damn it, I cannot remove this class. Oh, I cannot remove that class. Oh, I cannot override this. Oh, now I have to add an inline style to override the class, and so on and so on. So what I want to do is be able to replace the entire class set. I can add more classes if I want to, or I can just replace it, flat out replace it. And the way that looks in code is we have the mconfig variable, which is scoped to the main function, the main class. So this is available everywhere. If I do a search for mconfig, we have 34 hits in a relatively small file. This file is 175 lines. We got 34 hits on mconfig. So this is the backbone of the entire component. It's used everywhere. So the component runs on this configuration. So concentrating on the create tag, so the mconfig has two main properties. One is tag names, and the other one is CSS. And so typically, so then within the tag names, this tag names is an object, CSS is an object, and then we have properties, content parent, tabs, and this one here, content. So you can see most likely the CSS property name, CSS property key, let's put it that way, CSS property key and the tag names property key will most often than not be the same for a given DOM element. So this tag names which is an object, has the collection of tag names that this component will create. And CSS is an object, and it has the entire library of CSS class names. I'm referring to class names, not class styles. Class names will have all the ones that need to be applied to each element. And that configuration gets resolved inside the configure function at the very end. So what happens here is that we take our default configuration, we override it with a configuration that comes in from when the instance gets created, the web developer passes its own set of configurations. So we override our default with the user's configuration, and then we get to tags, tag names. Let's cover the CSS first. So what's happening here is that extend, which is, we are doing the same thing as the spread operator when you spread one object into another. But the spread operator is relatively too new in a way. I know it's the year 2022, but when you look at the usability it's relatively new, and I want this library code to remain relatively older, because then you have to use Babel and do all these builds for backwards compatibility, and I just don't like doing it. So this basically a noodles extend is doing a deep clone on similar to spread. So it's a deep clone, and so what we do, so the first value true means that yeah, we're deep cloning this. So the second argument here, what we are passing is we're going into the Mambo theme manager, that variable there, m theme, member variable theme. If I go, this means that m theme means that it's declared and defined at the top of our class. So when I go up here, m theme is the instance of Mambo theme that was instantiated when the application, when the library loaded. And then we have tags, which is the Mambo tag names. So we have these two variables being declared here at top. So now back to the bottom. So we are going to the theme, the Mambo theme, and we are calling the get theme method. And that get theme method expects an object. So that object needs to have the name of the theme and the name of the control that is requesting. Because you have a theme, the theme applies to the entire library of UI components. And the control is that single component itself that is requesting the set of class names. So in this case is the Mambo tab. And then the third argument is if we want to overwrite those classes. I will cover that in a little bit, not just yet. For now, let's just concentrate on this get theme method. So when we look into the Mambo theme, the Mambo theme is really a relatively tiny component. We're not gonna look into the add theme in this video. We'll just concentrate on the get theme only. And so when Mambo theme starts, which by the way, we need to refactor to class, but for now it's a function. So the Mambo theme takes one single parameter to start, is the initial themes, which means that it is optional, because that initial themes will be the default theme. That's how it gets saved. So Mambo theme on instantiation can save a default theme. And then you can fetch that theme using the get theme method. So the get theme method, all it does, it goes to that themes library. It looks at the name of the theme and then at the name of that control. And it just simply returns that. It's just as simple as that. There's nothing else to it. So before I go back to the Mambo tab, now let's look at how we are instantiating Mambo theme with that initial theme, which is optional. And so I have a file, a JavaScript file, which is called Mambo default theme. All this is basically a global variable. You'll see I used the keyword G underscore. G underscore means that it's a global variable that is available at the window object level. So this will be the same as doing this, window dot. It will be the same as doing this, right? So it's available at the, this might change actually, but don't pay too much attention on that yet. Bottom line is that we have a global Mambo default theme, and it's an object, and each key of this object is the name of that control. In our case, we're paying attention to the Mambo theme, Mambo tab, right? So this control Mambo tab is an object, that contains that library of class names that are going to be applied to our dynamically generated DOM elements. And so we have the global variable, and now we need to initialize the Mambo theme with this configuration, with this initial theme. And for that, we have a Mambo UI initializer file. This is also small and basically creates all those global variables of certain things that need to be available at the window object. This is also subject to change, this architecture here. But for now, this is the way it's working. And so here's where we create our instances of the Mambo theme and the tag names. And you can see we are calling it with this optional argument, Mambo default theme and Mambo default tag names. So now if I go to Mambo default tag names, it's the exact same design as the CSS. We have a control, which is the same as the CSS control name, but this object here contains the name of the tag names, right? Slightly different. So you can see we have 3 tag names, but for the theme, the Mambo tab has a few more class names. So one is the selected tab, and then is the content parent. This one, the parent. But whatever, that's irrelevant for now. So we are creating 3 tags, but we need to apply 5 class names, okay? So the bottom line is the same thing. It's the same design, and the Mambo UI initializer is creating that new instance available globally, and we pass in that as a configuration. So when our instance of Mambo theme loads, we are passing in that default configuration. And that's how Mambo tab is getting that library of tag names and class names. And now paying a bit more attention to this object, the control Mambo tab is obviously self-explanatory, but then the name of that theme is coming from our config theme, config tags. And so if I scroll up a little bit to our initial default configuration, here's where we have our 2 names here, tags and theme, and both are set to default. And so default, if we go into Mambo theme, here's our default. So we always initialize default with an empty object, and we automatically extend it with whatever initial themes or tag names was passed in during instantiation. So that's our default theme. And when we did that, in our initializer, we passed our default theme and default tags. So that's how our default themes are going under the default, and default tag names, which is identical also, is doing the same thing. Which this one is already on classes. I already did the Mambo tag names to class. So Mambo theme will eventually do the same thing. And so going back to Mambo tab, these are our default. But that's part of the default configuration, which means that these can be overwritten by the developer. And that's when the power of this design comes into play. So by default, we are getting that default configuration for both tag names and class names. And so how would it work now for the user to take advantage of this and configure the component differently? For that, we look into our demo Mambo tab, for example. In the Mambo tab configuration, the tab configuration here, you see we are not changing the default CSS or default tag name configuration. So how would this work if Facebook decides to use the Mambo tab and they want to set their own tab, their own class names? The way this would work eventually, there's a couple of ways, but one of them would be they come here to Mambo tab, right? This is the default set of Mambo class names. We would do something like this. We would do, let's put a prefix, Facebook Mambo tabs, right? So now we have this Facebook Mambo tab styles, and then everything that says Mambo will change to Facebook, right? Like so. And then on the Mambo default theme, what we can do here is we change this class names here to Facebook. We can do that. Let's see, where is this one? We'll replace that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, so now this default theme for Mambo tab is loading with these tabs, with these class names, which are the ones that now exist here. And now I can come and change my colors to whatever I want, for example. And so now the developer has full control. It has completely taken over the entire styling of that component by just simply swapping the class names. Another way of doing this is to create a theme. So let's say we're gonna put everything back. We're gonna put this changes back, so this remains the same. This Mambo tab will remain, we'll keep it like this. And Mambo UI, so this is our default. Default will still be the Mambo. And now we can add a new theme to this library. So the way this works is we're gonna take the Mambo default theme, right? We're gonna take just this as an example. I'm gonna copy this and bring it into the UI initializer. I'm gonna just paste this in, and this is gonna be called Facebook default theme. And for now, we're gonna concentrate just on the Mambo tab, right? That's it, just the Mambo tab. And we're going to replace that. We're still going to replace those 4, 2, 3, 4. Right, so now our Mambo tab is going to use these class names. And so we have the instance here of the tag names. And so we do, actually, let's just do it inline. I'm going to take this object, this, we're just going to do Mambo default theme. So we're going to add a theme, and what add theme expects, first we need to give it's an object, and we have to give it the name of that theme that we're adding to. So this is going to be, the name will be Facebook. The name will be Facebook. And the theme that we're adding here will be that. See, so we're adding a theme. The name of the theme is Facebook. And then the theme content is this, like so. Save that. And so now if we go to the Mambo tab, demo tab, Now we change the configuration. I'm a developer, I'm trying to consume this Mambo tab, but I have my own theme. So we're going to change it to theme Facebook, because that is what this property is expecting here. Say default is theme, we're going to change that to Facebook. So this config name will change. Now the value of this will be Facebook, not default. So I add that theme Facebook, change that, and just check again, add theme, name Facebook. So technically it should change to this. And let me fix this up here. This is obviously wrong. What I'm meant to do is this, like that. Okay, sorry about that.
First, use your fingerprints to unlock.
Okay, sorry about that. That's what I meant to do in here. Now, if we put a breakpoint in the code, just so you see what happens here in the add theme, we're in the add theme method. Stepping over, it passes it to if statements that catch an error. So everything succeeded. So when I look at themes, we have our default theme with those 4. So I'm going to step over one more. So now our new theme is in place, Facebook theme, and that's our Mambo tab. And these are the class names for the theme. So we'll let that go. Going to Mambo tab, elements. So technically, and now you can see we have our class names set. Now this broke a little bit because I didn't load the class names. So let's just do that really quick, just so I can, and let's go to the CSS. We had our Mambo tab, we'll just duplicate this, and now we'll just put the Facebook Mambo tab. So that style can actually load. Let that go into Mambo tab. And now we have, now that that's loaded. See, we can see that Facebook has that red. See, here's our Facebook tab. And all the logic continues to work as usual. And that will be the exact same pattern if we wanted to change also the tag names. I'm not going to go into that detail because it's literally exactly the same that I did for the default theme initializer here. You would do the same for tag names, exactly the same. Okay, so that's that. Now, if I'm a developer, so I added a Facebook theme, I come here and say on the demo tab, I say, well, you know what, so this is not using the demo, the Facebook theme anymore. I'm going to comment this out. You comment that out, refresh, and now we're back to the original set. So see how powerful that is? And just in one configuration, you can load your entire theme for your entire library. And this is very straightforward that anyone can work with. A junior developer can just read a simple object literally here, and any web designer can put 2 and 2 together here and very simply say, okay, these are my class names. When I need to make a change to a component globally, I come here and I can change. I change whatever I want. If I want to swap out a class, you do it. If you need to add something maybe here, you want to do something that, you know, it's more padding for whatever reason, maybe that's what works for you, that's what you do. And you replace it on your entire library on application load, and it's available to every Mambo tab under the theme Facebook. You know, that's just, and then you make your changes in CSS. So see that decoupling of responsibilities. That's why we don't apply any type of styles in JavaScript because it is super hard to override. You know, there is so many, like hundreds of styles that you could apply to a single element. So doing that in JavaScript is so much work. The complexity is so much higher than just following a simple, straightforward style sheet with unique classes, and you have full control of the installation. So now, let's say now Facebook says, okay, well, we need to add a new theme, because now we have a variation, we have a new theme. Now Facebook has a new theme. So we'll call this one Facebook version 2, you know, and maybe, yeah, Facebook version 2. And then you do that. So now that theme is available. So as a developer here, I can say, okay, I'm not using Facebook, I'm using Facebook theme version 2. See? And following the same extend, right? Extend, what you could also do, I'll take this really quick and do a very quick demo on the initializing here. We have the Facebook theme. So I'm going to paste this code here so I can have it. But we can actually do this. Instead of passing it in directly here, I can do Facebook theme. Right, so that's our original Facebook theme. So I pass that in here, like so. But now we got Facebook theme version 2. And that could be simply, we're going to extend. We're going to extend. We're extending Facebook theme. We're saying, okay, so, oops, I totally cut that incorrectly. Let me bring it back just to be the whole thing. So, copy that, and now we're going to take our original, instead of going to the theme to get, we're going to start with our original theme, and I keep doing this wrong, so let me just do like this, comma, that. So there's going to be Facebook theme, right? And now we're going to extend it with a new. So let's extend it first. We're going to extend that into a new Facebook theme 2. And now I'm going to take, I can say Facebook theme version 2, which I already know has a name Facebook. Then I'm going to go into the theme object, and I'm going to go to the Mambo, let's go into the Mambo tab. And I'm going to change maybe just the tabs property, and this one will have a different tab. And sorry, this needs to be so. So Mambo theme, Mambo tab, that's because it has a hyphen here. That's why. So theme, Mambo tab, the tabs. So this is going to change from Facebook tabs. Let's say maybe we decided to call it Facebook tabs version 2, if you wanted to do that. And so now we add the theme version 2, like that. Theme version 2. We add it. So you can extend the original, make tweaks to it, and then add it as a new version. And actually, what I messed up here, it needs to have a different name. Yeah, so this theme, the name will be Facebook version 2. So we have a new name, version 2, and then we're going to replace one class name on there, and then we add it into it. So let's try this out. Let's see what error I get. So I already added this one, so this is the one that needs to go. This needs to be deleted. Okay, so, okay, this is gonna throw an error here because I don't have the mutils. The mutil needs to be the G. Well, you know what, I'm not gonna try this, guys, because this is gonna throw an error. I have to bring the utils and it's just not worth it. Then you get my point. You can basically add all your themes to it and magically then when you go to consume it, we use Facebook too. And now lastly, which believe it or not, it always happens for front-end web developers, always. It doesn't matter how much time and effort your graphic design people or your developers, it doesn't matter how much time you took to develop and configure your styles, you will always have some cases that have to get tweaked anyways. It just needs more padding or maybe a different color. They happen to need to be a little bit bigger. Always, it just never fails. And so going back into the Mambo tab, when we extend, right, the classes, right, we're getting the theme that we want with all the classes, we actually override it. Whatever we got from the theme, we can also override it individually. So let's say what I try to do here, let's say this Facebook theme 2, that we replace one class name. Maybe you didn't have to create a whole new theme because maybe you just happen to need it for one instance, one case. So this is just too much work for wanting to replace one class or two for a single instance in your application. So we're gonna delete this. Let's just get rid of it. Right, so we're back to our original Facebook theme. And in the demo tab, so I'm loading the Facebook theme, but then I can also say, okay, for this one tab, I need to change one CSS. The CSS that I need to change is, let's say, the tabs, right? So this one here, I need to replace this Mambo tabs. So I'm going to say this Mambo tabs is going to use other. And I'm going to run this. It will throw an error. I mean, not an error. The style will break because we don't have a class name Mambo tabs other, but you'll see it. So we're getting the Facebook theme and then we're overriding that one. And actually I put the name here, override, right? So see how powerful? So we're overriding the default entire theme and then we're overriding a couple, and we're overriding one class name. And that is happening here as the third argument to the extend method. And let's run this, let's see what we get. Going here, there should be one. Okay, here we have the more padding because we added that. Where is the override? So it was on the tabs. Here it is. See, Mambo tabs override. But see, you shall have the Facebook. So we got the Facebook theme loaded, but for that one, we overrode it with a specific class name. Because for this one case and not the others, we just needed to do it. See how easily you can swap out. So this is how you have full control over the styles. And from the outside, like going back to the very beginning when I said you have an inside logic and an outside logic. The inside logic, yes, it could be a little tricky to get used to this and all this configuration. But then from the outside, see how all of that complexity translates to an overly simplified way of taking over the CSS. And you can do the same for the tag names, right? So we have the tags, which by default is tags, right? So I could do the same. If I want to swap out the tags, then I configure things that I already showed you, and I can come here and set for tags, we're going to use the Facebook. Going to use the Facebook set of tag names. And so it will load in the DOM all this Mambo tab content would change the tag names, would change to whatever you passed in the configuration. And that completes this tutorial on this simple yet complex yet powerful design pattern. Okay, thank you for watching. Bye bye.